Hello and welcome to Virtuosity's Fireside Chat. I'm Corey, one of the co-founders of Virtuosity, and I'm here with our other co-founder, Mary Crossan. Today we want to chat about getting away from this idea of a temporary bump and getting at how character can have a strategic impact in organizations. And so what we're going to do is we'll link an article in the description where you can follow along, and we actually have a visual representation of what we're going to be talking about today around getting away from the temporary bump. But for those of you that aren't able to look at the article, I'll quickly just illustrate or describe what the figure looks like. And so we're looking along two axes. One at the bottom is called breadth of implementation, and that goes from the individual to team to organization, scaling all the way up to, or from team to group, scaling all the way up to the organization. And then on the vertical axis, we're looking at depth of implementation. And so we're moving from awareness to assessment to development to institutionalization. And the strategic impact then is moving across both of those axes. So can you share more about why this is important? Why are we talking about this?
This idea of the temporary bump, it's evident anywhere, in any leadership development. Everybody laments the fact that we go from this awareness that is cultivated in leadership development sessions, but then what happens beyond that? And we really actually don't see sustained change. When we look at elevating character alongside competence, we're really thinking about getting to that strategic impact, meaning that you have to work on both sides of those vectors to go beyond that temporary bump to see that lasting impact.
And so let's talk about if we go along one axis and not the other. So let's start with if we're moving along that horizontal axis, so the breadth of implementation, moving from individual to team to group to organization, if we're scaling up, but we're not paying attention to the vertical axis, which is institutionalizing it. In the figure, we have that called flavor of the month. Can you share more about that?
Well, again, flavor of the month is something people experience in all sorts of places. It becomes that place where somebody in the organization thinks something is a great idea and they start to implement changes to systems and processes of the organization. But we've never changed the people. So we actually haven't gone on the other axis looking at what awareness, assessment, and development is of those individuals. So you're scaling it along the organization side of things, but how have you changed anybody in the system? And I think you find out over a period of time that's not sustainable, and hence flavor of the month.
Yeah. And then if we move along that vertical axis, so if we're trying to institutionalize character without scaling it to the organizational level, we call those character islands in the figure. Can you share more about that?
And character island is not the worst place to be, because you've got this depth that is being cultivated within a group of people. The problem is that if you don't connect that to the rest of the organization, it remains pretty isolated. So we typically find it's a good place to start because you may want to cultivate that. Could be in a business unit, in a working team. Yet we want to be thinking about how do we share that learning across the organization, again, to get to that strategic impact.
And then so I want to talk a little bit about how what we've done in design Virtuosity to actually help us move across both of those axes. So the first one is when we try and get away from, if we're looking at that vertical axis and we're moving from awareness to assessment to development, what we focused on in Virtuosity is this idea of a daily practice. You talked about the temporary bump, you do this great session that leaves you inspired, but can you share a little bit more about how we've incorporated this daily practice into Virtuosity?
That is absolutely the heart of Virtuosity, and really the heart of that strategic vector impact. Character development comes from habit change and habit sustainment, because we can actually atrophy our character if we're not investing in it. So having something, as we often talk about, going to the character gym, that you're going to be doing on a daily basis. In our case, we talk about it as 5 minutes a day of investment in the development of your character transforms every other minute of your day. And that's really the piece that we want to be thinking about, that then underpins all of the other facets of the strategic impact. Think about the fact that if you were a developing character of all individuals within the organization, how could that then affect things like performance management, the quality of the conversations that you're facing, the risk management in the organization, the culture of the organization? So there's this amplifying effect that occurs.
And then keeping on that vertical axis, to get from that development piece to the institutionalization, in Virtuosity, we really see that to help individuals develop their character, aligning the systems of which individuals operate within is really powerful. And so another big piece that we bring in Virtuosity is helping individuals see how they can influence those systems to better support that development. And then as we then shift to the breadth or the horizontal axis, moving from the individual to the team and group and organization, could you share more about how we've tried to make Virtuosity enable that scalability, but not losing the really important piece of customizability as well?
I think one of the things we have certainly faced over the last 15 years is the lack of subject matter expertise that people have in understanding what character is, how to develop it, how to embed it in organizations. And we felt it was really important to have within the app everything we know about all of those practices made available to individuals and organizations so that they could cultivate that subject matter expertise to be able to do the kinds of things that we've been doing for the last 15 years. And so that's, I think, this idea of scalability and the subject matter expertise with all of the exercises, videos, materials, resources that you need to be able to develop and embed character in the organization.
And then when you scale it, with the really important thing about character is that everyone has their own unique needs, their own unique path. And so what we've enabled in the Virtuosity program is for every single individual to create their own path, to choose which behaviors they need to focus on developing so we don't lose that individualized custom piece. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close up things for today?
I was just going to add that there's that individual piece, but the one thing I've really enjoyed about the app is you and I being partners in it, that a lot of my development has come from the insights that I can cultivate myself, and yet our weekly conversations, I know that's going to be a subject of another fireside chat, where we can review your assessment of me and we can talk about what it is that I might not really even see in myself, which has been an incredibly, enormously valuable exercise for me.
Yeah, and one of the big things that we do try and do in Virtuosity is strengthen that relationship between individual development, but then bringing it into groups and organizations so that the insights that you find in Virtuosity come alive in the types of conversations you can have with one another. Well, we hope exploring this idea of getting away from the temporary bump is that there is more possibility beyond the horizon of the temporary bump. And so we hope that we've inspired you to think about a more strategic approach to bringing character into whatever it is that you're trying to do. So thanks so much for tuning in. Bye for now.